Welcome to Business Aspirin, pain relief for business. Clint Junell has managed a restoration company in Dallas since 2008 and is one of the top drying experts in his region. Clint is also the co-founder of JobDocs, a software developed to help his team manage their overwhelming volume of projects. On the podcast, Clint brings together business managers and leaders to share with you how they have overcome their business pains and how you can too. And now, here's your host, Clint Junell.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Business Aspirin. I'm your host, Clint Junell, and today with me, I have a good friend of mine, Klark Brown. Klark and I have a unique connection and relationship in regard to the restoration space and just some mutual people that we've known that we won't necessarily talk about in some of this environment. But Klark is a consultant and leads and runs Restoration Advisors. Has been involved in some other things that you guys are all aware of. I'll let him talk about that stuff as we kind of go through this if he wants to. And just a unique story. So I'm excited about having Klark on because of Klark's perspective in the space. And then two, which I mentioned to him before we started actually recording, is Klark has not only started his own business and knows how to grow a business, but his business is helping others start and grow their business. So he's going to have some just nuggets of just great things for us to chat about in regard to business aspirin and business pain points and things of that nature. Klark, how the heck are you, brother?
Great, Clint. How are you doing?
I'm good, buddy. I'm so glad to have you on, dude, for real.
I love how the sun's coming down on your face.
Yeah. Like I was like, I'm gonna have to do something with that, and maybe we just rock it. Maybe we just rock it.
Great, man. Good to see you.
You too, buddy. So, how's your world?
It's really, as Dave Ramsey said, it's better than I deserve. It's really a lot better than I make it out to be. Having fun, which is just my main thing. I'm enjoying what I'm doing and growing my team, which is always a struggle, but it's like one of those bittersweet things. So
Sure.
Getting to know each other, figuring out personality types and things like that. But we're in a kind of a growth spurt right now. We just launched a new process and system a few months ago, and just kind of like giraffe legs, kind of getting them under us and figuring out what's broken and what's not. But I can't complain. And I'm also getting the season change. I live in Virginia, and we're 55 degrees today, and I had a hot summer, so I'm really enjoying the cool down.
But other than that, I'm talk to me about a hot summer.
No, I can't.
You can't. Now you can still brag a lot about the fact that it's 55 and crisp and nice and cool this morning. You can do that. You can't talk about the hot summer.
I can just say that I was smart enough to leave. I grew up there, and I endured those summers, and I'm like, I can leave.
This is hot. Why are we still here? This is miserably hot.
Yeah, man.
Well, that's awesome, dude. So like I'm excited. I've seen a lot of the work that you're doing in terms of you guys have a pretty good rhythm on emails and putting out your own podcast and doing things of that nature. So let's talk about your business. Let's talk about Restoration Advisors, and what is it? What do you do? How did you get into the restoration space? How did you leave the restoration space to get back into the restoration space? Are you in the restoration space? You don't do restoration anymore, really. So talk about whatever it is you want to talk about there.
Yeah, I'll start at the high level briefly. Grew up right down the road from you in East Texas, a town that's not even worth big enough to mentioning. And my family was in the dry cleaning business. We did laundry and dry cleaning, starch the jeans, the whole bit. And my dad was an entrepreneur. My mom and dad both ran the businesses. We kind of grew that business, or they grew that business as I was growing up to pretty much a large entity, much larger now looking back than I thought it was at the time, because when you're in it, you're like, mom and dad have too many businesses, whatever. But I left school, or I left, hometown, went off to college and played baseball. And I said, I'm going to do anything with my life other than dry cleaning. Anybody that's ever been to a dry cleaner, it's hard work. It's hot. It's sometimes
smelly,
thankless,
yeah.
But I now cherish those times. But I just said, I'm going to do anything but that. And went to college, came out, wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be to just create anything. So I wound up back in dry cleaning, and I ended up staying in that industry for about 10 or 11 years through owning my own cleaners in Texas and across the country in Florida. And then I worked for other people because I always believe that every entrepreneur should work for people sometimes. because that's your resume. That's learning what you don't know and see how other people do things. And it's humbling. Fast forward to right around 98, 99, started a restoration textile cleaning in Houston, Texas. This was when the mold is gold days. This was after the Dripping Springs emergence. And it was just such a need. Our retail cleaners was getting inundated with people bringing entire homes of their soft goods, drapes and stuff to our retail business, and it was choking it out production wise. So we opened a separate company that just handled that like a wholesale thing, grew that business. That became my main focus because the margins were great, less dealing with the public, blah, blah, blah. And went through that thing, made a lot of relationships with some national disaster companies, local and regional. And an acquisition approached, sold that company. And I was ready. Just like, this is not how I'm going to spend the rest of my life. And I jumped into this industry, the restoration disaster, the actual contracting, doing the structure and other things with a really large company who had been my client. And they said, the owner, the principal of that company told me, give me 10 years of your life and you'll be able to write your own path. I will show you how this industry works and you can do anything you want to do. Well, I gave him 8. He still tells me I owe him 2. But he's been basically right. I wouldn't say that I have pursued super juggernaut, large company structure, but I have decided that I could do whatever I want to do. Worked in this industry. This is my 21st year in aging myself. I've owned my own restoration company in Houston. And again, scaled that, exited that. I wouldn't say I'm a business builder as much as I am. It just naturally happens. Someone comes along and I do get bored easy. I'm a visionary and I'm on to the next thing. So sitting there, sold my company. What do I want to do now that I've grown up? And I was truthful with myself. I generally like helping people that don't know what they don't know, learn micro lessons that grow into those bigger conversations. So I just said, I don't like the term consultant because consultants come into companies and have, flow charts and PowerPoints and say the same thing. And they have spreadsheets that nobody looks at. And I said, I just like to be an advisor. I like to, as Clint, you and I talked about, I'm more comfortable sitting on the tailgate talking about business than I am in a room with a dressed up with khakis. So I just built Restoration Advisors, and we help small to medium-sized restoration companies have a better life. Not necessarily grow massive companies, but grow a company that doesn't consume them, that doesn't require them to work all holidays, all nights, and all weekends, and do their own Xactimates. To have fun, build stuff, build people, and then show them how to scale and get out of their business and go across the country and meet people like Clint and Janelle and spend time with people like that. And then they really start to learn that growth. So that's in a nutshell what I do. We're on the operational side, Clint. We're not a sales and marketing focused company. Right. Just not my natural spot. So we work on operations systems, hacks, playbooks, whatever you want to call them, on how to just systemize things so that they're consistent, predictable, and
that's the beautiful thing to me about having you on this podcast today. Is the goal of the podcast was to just talk to business owners and help this next group of people coming through that's either trying to get started or trying to go from $1 million to 3 million or whatever the case may be, and be able to identify pains in business so that from our experiences they can learn listening to a podcast and gather some little bits of information about how do I make this work? And that's what you're doing as a business, is helping those same guys. So it's so great to have you here because it aligns so perfectly with what Business Aspirin is trying to do. And just, hey man, listen to this podcast. There's 3 nuggets of information that you can grab and apply those to your business, and it's going to help you in some fashion. And especially today, like even just making a connection with somebody like you and being able to go, okay, Klark does operational efficiencies. And he helps identify business pains. You are business aspirin. You are helping solve those business pains, right? Like take 2 Klarks in the morning and then call me tomorrow. It's kind of that thing, right? So
good way to look at it.
And that's why I was excited to finally get you on. And I know you and I have had to battle back and forth on schedules just to kind of make this thing work, but it's exciting to have you here. So let's talk then about, like, would you rather talk about pains you've experienced when you've stepped into starting your businesses and restoration advisors or whatever? Or do you want to talk about pains you've seen others experience, which
I think they're the same. I think those things.
Let's talk about it.
I want to first tell people to talk about systems. Systems causes a emotional, mental, your eyes roll back in your head because it seems like everyone talks about it. But the way I like to put it in perspective is there's not any business person that's going to be watching your podcast today that's not struggling in some way with the people aspect, the labor, the shortage of, the lack of engagement of. Systems help that. They don't alleviate your people problem, but they make the people problem easier. Whether it's once you have a system and the positions are clear and what you need to happen, it's easier to hire the right people. When you don't know what you need, you hire anyone, and usually the wrong anyone. So I tell people that as much as you don't want to go back to the old Rockefeller habits, they effing work. They just fundamentals still drive businesses. We live in a world where every TikTok is telling you do things differently, be the outsider, be that. You can do all that, but your business needs to produce a result so that you're allowed to go do the things you want to do and be your own freaky self. So I think that the pains I've had, I would tell you most of them, I've watched other people have them and I still had them. I think that's just natural that we put on blinders. We go in head first, especially the entrepreneur types where just like risk is super low. I've been fortunate. I was fortunate, not lucky, but I was fortunate to have exposure to a good group of people that gave me some integrated business sense. I've always, I learned from a few people besides my dad that don't own a dry cleaning company, own a business that does that. Make the business work and then just go freaky on building and designing and creating whatever it is your heart's desire. But it's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have fundamentally things that have to work before you can do the thing. You got to do the things you need before the things you want. And a lot of people upside down do that wrong, and they try to just go out and then they struggle. They start getting these self-limiting beliefs in themselves and others, and they get negative and start painting their own visions and stuff like that. So yeah, pain points happen. And I will tell everybody, you won't have a business without them, but you don't have to have all of them. And they're all, as you grow, you're going to have different ones. As you know, you've grown your businesses. What got you to $1 million doesn't get you to 4. The people that got you there, they either need to be upgraded or outgraded. So
and systems and processes and all that has to be changed, right? Like you can't do the same. Like to $1 million, I just kind of kept everything in my head and did what I needed to do to make things move forward, right? You can't do that when you start getting over $1 million. You just there's just too much, man, and so you got to do something, which is what we did. Like we did something, and
your
built some
energy
things to make it work.
Down.
Yeah,
your
for sure.
Energy level goes down, and it's like your brain is the strongest muscle, and you can't use it all the time. It has to have something to fall back, a Google inside of your own head that you go back to that other people can tap into.
Yeah, that's great.
But I've had my struggles in business. I struggle with ideas too much. I'm a visionary on the chart more, and I probably most people I want to do the next thing. I pride myself on looking down the road and around the corner, but sometimes I don't just look and identify. I take action when we still have things back here. So that's probably my biggest Achilles heel. And my team has gotten good at holding me back, throwing the rope, reminding me why doing all that will hurt what we're doing today. So those are my biggest lessons. And I think that happens in our space. Just going to every ICRC class to become the best technician. It's important to be technically founded, but there's probably a lot of classes you're not going to that would help you huge. And I just try to encourage people to think of balancing their education between the technical, the philosophical, and everything.
Well, and a business isn't knowing how to sling fans.
No,
you can be great at drawing.
A small business
and terrible at business.
Yeah.
And
if you don't want to grow, make sure you sling fans the rest of your career.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the perfect recipe.
Yeah. One of the things you said was, the hierarchy of needs. And one of the things that I've seen in conversations with the guys on the podcast even is there are so many people that put their wants ahead of their needs, and that puts them in a bind in business. So they want that big fancy truck and they do it too early. They don't hold and wait on it. Instead, it's a need. Oh, I got to have that, because they're trying to show something. And I think you would agree with me. The perspective is, don't do that. Like, you don't have to show anything right now. Like, grow your business, and then later you can show whatever you want when you're solid and set. And so I appreciate you saying, put your needs in front of your wants, because truly you need to grow your business. You need to get these things in place, processes, the things that help you grow and scale and be more successful.
Yeah. I think the old adage is, if you take care of it, it will take care of you. And,
sure.
And the opposite is true. Again, I love learning from others, watching what others are doing, but not to duplicate, just to absorb. And when you start watching other people, you'll start seeing the things that they have. Again, back to the big truck, the trips to Bali. And you're like, I want that.
Yeah.
Well, I want a lot of things, but what's that going to do? What will the consequences be? What will the results be? And will it hurt me to wait another 2 years to do some things right and go then? You probably find out you didn't really want that big truck. Gas was $4.50 a gallon for a while. You're like, yeah, I would have rather had a Toyota. So I think
I can talk about that experience.
Yeah. But I think impulsiveness for a small business, especially in a really volatile, ever-changing world and market, you just feel like you got to pivot every day. I think that's just it's fun, but it's hard because the results are not what you want. So,
and two, if you look at when you and I both got started in this space, we weren't looking at and watching other people in the restoration space take any trips or do anything or show what they were doing, because there was no tools to do that with. Social media has created this vision where people show the spectacular things of what they're doing, whether or not, your business could be failing. You could take a trip to Bali just to try to get out of it. Right.
Yeah.
So stop chasing what other people are doing. And then focus on your business and your growth and what you need, and kind of navigate it that way. So talk to me about, like, you talk about business pains and you think everybody's kind of consistent in pains. And I think that a lot of that is true. I had a buddy tell me recently, and part of what he said, and I've said this on a couple of podcasts now, but he said, do the right thing for the right reason, trust God for the rest, bad days are guaranteed. And I love that part of, bad days are guaranteed. And this is a Marine veteran buddy of mine that was blown up and, lost a leg and got pretty mangled in part of the war. And just his perspective on it is, it is what it is. Bad days are guaranteed. And I think that's the same in business though, right? Especially in the restoration space. Like, man, bad days are guaranteed. $90,000 you're owed on a project isn't completely uncommon. I am aware of one right now that's chasing $20 million on a project.
Yeah.
Bro, 20 million.
Yeah.
And just getting ghosted right now. So, like, that's a bad day, right?
Wow.
I didn't know how you get there. I'd love to be in a position where I could have even afforded to sit and wait on a $20 million one to pay me. But so talk about the bad days. Let's talk about what happens. What happens in the restoration space? What happens in restoration advisors? What happens with some of your clients, without obviously being specific about any of them? Like, what are the things that you see in the restoration space that are bad days or cause bad days?
I think we have a lot of challenges, and the lack of people knowing how to process what's most important. That the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller, is we focus on 1,000 things, but it's usually one thing that would make those thousands be more like 12. And when we ignore that truth, and because it's just, we feel for whatever emotional reason we're triggered to put our fingers into everything and not hire people and trust people and micromanage people to do that. I think that I don't see a lot of big issues at Restoration Advisors. I just see a compound of all of them that manifest themselves in not handling and then just kind of freezing and going dark and then leaving it up to, like a casino, playing the odds. Let's just see what happens. I'm going to keep this toxic employee and I'm not going to replace them because I need to have them to do the work, but maybe they'll get better while you've done nothing to make the situation better. And then, by the way, in that case, the rest of your team is just hating you because you're keeping this person in their company. Everybody that's watched this has had that before, that you fire someone, you release them, whatever you want to call it, and or move them to another department if you have one. And the people that were there, like, thank you.
Oh, thank God. Yeah, sure.
Thank God. And by the way, they said we would have picked up the slack for that one person and done
You'd have just done it. Yeah.
You'd adjusted.
Yeah.
I think the pain points in our industry, Clint, would not be a secret of the insurance dynamic, the collections. It's not as complicated as we think. It's because our industry views insurance as their customer. I know that they have a customer and a homeowner, but they think in ways that that customer is only going to get the money from their insurance company. And that might be true in fact, but putting your customer first and focus in front of you, onboarding them the right way. Onboarding is a big thing to me. Onboarding your client to let them know the best outcome for this is for us to do our best work and be paid for that. You as an insured, if you're using proceeds from insurance, have rights. You have the superior position in this entire pyramid between the three of us. Hold them accountable, hold us accountable. You have a policy that says so, blah, blah, blah. But when we remove them from the responsibilities they have and the empowerment that they deserve, we end up assuming the risk for them. And that is very confusing for a service-based company that says, I showed up, I did what I was supposed to do, we held the hand of this customer, and now you don't want to pay me. It causes this aggravation. It causes people to think that all customers are going to cheat them. All insurance adjusters are bad people. None of those things are true, but that's the painting. And I think getting stuck in that mindset from the person that drives the ship on the whole company, it starts to go off course and starts to do things in response to that one or two bad $20 million claim. The rest of your customers are paying you, but that one that didn't, I'm going to pull a hand grenade.
You get tainted by that one, right? Yeah.
Tainted by that one. I'm going to change everything we do. We're going to change it. Although that's only 1%. And I see that as an emotional reaction. And I try to just help people if you're in the high view, stay in the high view. That will pass. These bad things that we talked about, Clint, you and I have both had horrible business experiences. And we almost now kind of laugh about them. Like the pain's gone. We now have a podcast that we can talk about them in a way of learning and overcoming. But at the time, the end of the world.
Yeah.
So I just think that everybody, if they remember that the worst things that have ever happened to you aren't currently the worst things, they just were bad times. And
so far we've survived all of them, right?
And honestly, we won't go there, but sometimes the best things come from the worst things.
Yeah.
Every decision I made after my worst decisions have made me more successful in whatever it is I do. If I hadn't have had that, a lot of people don't, if you watch Jocko talks about his video, good. When something bad happens, say, good. I needed the lesson. Spend more time on this, so I think in business,
and to that, there's a lot in terms of what you said that I would like to see if we can kind of comment on. But even on that statement, good, right? Literally, your brain is wired so that if you say something out loud to yourself, your brain doesn't know if it was you or somebody else. Your brain's not that smart. So if you say, good, we'll overcome it, and you say that stuff out loud, like literally there's opportunities for your brain to go, oh, well, maybe it's not as bad. It'll be okay. Everything will be fine. Those kind of things are valuable. And I think that's significant. I love that entire podcast on that section where he's talking about that stuff. But okay, so let's go back to a couple things. And I want to talk about the fact that in part of what you're saying, I hear you're saying we're making it harder than we should be. And part of that comes to, we can't keep our hands out of everything, which I did. Like when you're trying to grow and trying to navigate it, you're doing everything. Like you're creating the Xactimate and you're making the sales and you're slinging the fans and you're doing all the monitors and you're doing all those things. And as you grow, unless you get processes in place, you do the same thing with the next person. You have them do everything and it just becomes this cluster of a mess. And so you're obviously advising in your role on individuals of how to avoid some of these things. That's what your coaching is about, right? How do you get people to take their hands off of stuff and not make it so hard? How do you get people to endure that 36 hours of pain on firing the toxic person instead of enduring it for the next 6 months or 6 years of making the rest of their team miserable? How do you advise in that environment? How do you identify those pain points for those team members? How do you have that discussion in terms of people listening to us right now, knowing you, and that's part of the reason we do Business Aspirin, is because you and I have had these pains, and I want these people to know it's not just them. You're not the only person that's experiencing this pain. We've had them. So in your role, how do you, I know part of how this works, but people haven't heard you tell this story. So how do you go in and identify and see what's happening and then fix those problems? How's it work?
You have to have some tools, and they could be the old, it could be the SWATs. I have a fix this next. I believe in, this is something that we've coached, is ACDC. It came from a learning that I learned from Mike McAllowitz. It's ACDC is an acronym. Besides a great band, it's the 4 primary stages of your business, and it helps you to identify, where am I struggling, because I'm probably solving the wrong problems, right? I've heard you say that before. A is for acquire. You have to acquire leads. You have to be, that's marketing, that's drawing in new opportunities, creating a brand that makes its own. However you do that, you may buy your leads. C is converting. You've got to convert those leads, those eyeballs, to trust that you can solve their problem if you're a service or your product, whatever. D, the ACDC of D, is delivery. You actually got to deliver it. You've actually got to do good work. And that's technically not cause mold in houses. Get a building where it doesn't smell from a fire. Get a business back open. You begin to build a reputation. And then C is collecting. So ACDC. So when people call me and say, I've got this problem, and I'll say, it sounds to me, if I listen to ACDC, the cash flow is keeping you. Well, I need to hire better people. Well, why aren't you hiring better people? Because we have too much in receivables. So you have a collections problem. And it's, by the way, it's not because the insurance won't pay you. It's just you don't have a great process. So, Clint, to answer what you say, I have lots of stories that would tune into this if anybody ever wanted to reach out to me. But we teach a lot of tactics. And I love to tell people, I don't care if you're small or medium, which are the 2 sizes that I deal with. You can still do big company things. You can still steal what they do on a smaller scale and put it into your company. Because, by the way, you're going to need it later anyway. So might as well get it in and make a habit. I have all those. We have playbooks for just about everything. I'll usually start with a conversation, say, hey, I don't really coach as much anymore as my team does, but a lot of people say, I need some Klark time. And it's usually sitting on the tailgate. I'm struggling with this. Well, I've got a fix for that. We might can fix it here today, or it might be something over the next couple of months or whatever. But what I have found, most of my clients and people that I've worked with, and even people that are friends that call me up, say, hey, you got 5 minutes. And I'm like, hell yeah, I've got 8 minutes. Let's go. It's just talking through things. It's having someone who doesn't have an emotional, irritated attachment to their problem, that sees things differently, that gives them the clarity to take a breath, realize, like you said, that everybody else, you're not unique, that everybody has that problem. And this is how they deal with it, or you just do deal with it. And this is how you modify everything around it to make it less of a problem. And I have one client that, just tell you, last week on Tuesday, he called me up and he said, he's in Wisconsin. He said, Klark, our goal this year for end of 2023 was 5.9 million. And I'm like, great, I know. And I've been watching his scorecard and I know where he's at on his P&Ls. And he goes, we've already hit that. We're a little past it. And I said,
vacation.
and he said, he goes, we're going to do 6.3 this year. I'm like, great. I said, what's made that possible? He goes, you've cleared the way. Now he lives in Wisconsin. He talks in terms of snow blowers. He goes, a sidewalk that's been cleared is much easier to go through than one that's full. He goes, you've cleared the phone calls, the issues, the people not doing what they're supposed to. The turnover has dropped to almost nothing. It's made him, which his ability is selling, to be, I can go sell or stop selling if we're too busy or we're shorthanded. I can manage that because the business is no longer the part that needs 100% of me. And that's what I think I like to say that we help with. And hopefully any good coach says, a coach on a field, you just need to get to the end zone. What's in your way is your defender, your offensive line isn't blocking. And we're going to work on that separately. But you just need to keep focusing on the end zone. I'm going to talk in football talk there. But those kinds of anecdotes, those kinds of real world examples. I'm a storyteller, and I use this thing called a kind of like, don't talk about the thing they have. Take it out of that context and find another area that they can relate to where they're not so attached and like, I see that. And that might be the medical, that might be a past industry they were in. It might be something that we're watching in the news right now. Elon Musk. How do you think he deals with having 8 companies that do trillions of dollars? He can't have these kinds of problems. He has to hire the people to do those things and then just trust them and accept the bad shit's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Beep that out.
Yeah, we'll keep it in there. I don't think we're regulated the same way. But yeah, like bad days are guaranteed, right? So bad days are guaranteed, and it is what it is. But so playbooks. You've got multiple playbooks. What's your favorite thing to solve for your clients? Like what's your wheelhouse, or what was your wheelhouse when you were doing mostly the coaching? What is it you're looking for to try to make right for somebody?
That's a big question. I have some personal favorites. I'm currently in the last year and a half. I think that client onboarding, telling your customer what the journey is going to look like, what their part is, what your part is, what everyone's role is to create a better outcome. Because when you don't do that, everybody's just confused, and confusion causes fear. Fear causes irrational decisions. And then they don't want to pay you because they don't really know that you did what you said you were going to do. Right. So client onboarding is a big one. I always just like to tell the owner, there's not a playbook, but just one step at a time. The problem you're having today you won't even think about that next week. You might barely, but just moving forward. I think knowing your numbers is crucial. It's not overly complicated. You just have to have systems to measure it so that you can view it and then learn to recognize what they are. I think that our industry has a very, very odd relationship with how they price the work that they do. And they don't know why they charge what they charge. So therefore it's hard to defend and it's hard to fight for. And so I have some playbooks on helping people. You probably are struggling because you're not charging the right amount. And that sometimes is too much. You're trying to charge something for, you can't be the worst burger joint trying to charge the most. It's just not going to work. It's just not or you're going after the wrong customer that can't afford that burger. So I think those are some playbooks, but the people part is probably the accountability, how to hold people accountable. And that comes from the employee, your staff member, your team member. They need to know what their part in this venture is. Sure. And what happens if they don't. There has to be super, super crystal clear, 5th grade level discussions. They're like, oh, if I don't do this, it affects all of those things, including me and my pay and stuff like that. So those are some of the playbooks that I like to spot on.
Sure. Okay. So if I was counting kind of correctly, I'm going to say there was probably 5 different playbooks you essentially mentioned right there in that period of time. And so I want to dive into just kind of the first aspect without giving your playbook away. But the first one you mentioned was client onboarding. And so if somebody's brand new and they're not, accustomed to this, industry specifically, I just lost an earbud. I'm going to try to see if I can grab it this way, put it back in so the other one doesn't fall out. If they're not accustomed to this industry, they don't know how this works. When you say client onboarding, they're like, well, yeah, I got the customer's information, put it in the job. But what you're talking about specifically is if you're in the restoration space and you're trying to get paid for what you've done, it doesn't matter whether you're a TPA vendor or a program vendor, for those of you that don't understand some of this language. the insurance company is going to have some problem with something you build, regardless of who you are, what you've done. And they are going to regurgitate information back to the customer that says, nobody ever bills for this. Nobody ever charges for this. This is the only customer that in my 30 years in the restoration space, this is the only customer. And you're laughing because this is the exact same thing you've heard over and over. And restoration companies throughout the country here regularly. I've been doing this for 30 years and I've never seen anybody charge overhead and profit on mitigation only. I've never seen anybody charge any kind of admin fee for this. Well, no, a fuel fee should just be a part of your cost of doing business, that sort of thing. And so if they don't know, I mean, I was guilty of this early on too, right? Oh my God, really? Okay. You just take those things off and they're telling the customer nobody's ever charged. The customer's getting upset with you because you're fighting with the insurance company about a bill. The customer's like, they're saying this. If you don't have a defense, if you haven't onboarded your customer correctly, which is what you're talking about, to understand exactly how this process is going to work, then now you're fighting both your customer and the insurance company, because the insurance company is pretty good at, banging their drum and putting in a position that makes it difficult for you to get collected. And so that's where it's at. Klark has a playbook, guys, to help you navigate that business pain point. He has business. We're going to have whatever copy. If you reach out to Klark, post this podcast because you found Klark this way, then he's just going to write aspirin on every playbook that he hands you. It's going to be Restoration Advisors aspirin. Like, this is how we solve this problem. But he has aspirin. Honestly, he probably has hydrocodone for your business. Like, he's got real good painkillers in what he's done, right? So Klark's really good at what he does. And he's helped a lot of companies have some really good success. And he's taken the time to navigate identifying and understanding what's required to put these playbooks together. And his playbook is not, he can't hand you a playbook and it solve all of your problems, because all of us are unique. We do things differently. But a damn good place to start, right, Klark? So super exciting about that sort of thing. So I know we were set for a 30-minute podcast. We're a little over that already. So I don't want to drag out your time. I could talk to you for hours, dude. The times when we're driving down the road, we could chat for a long time, just driving to wherever we're going.
Let's just do it again next year, Clint. Let's just do part 2 next year. And maybe some questions will have come up in the comments. Maybe people will mention, and we'll have things to bring back and go deeper into. But I'm always available for doing this with you.
Well, I'd love to do it. Is there any last little bit of advice you'd like to share with someone before we bounce off?
I mean, a lot, but I just do your best. We have to run the business. We have to fight the insurance company, but don't let you team. And this was a conversation this week with a big group of our clients. Don't let your aggravation with the frustrations of the business be done in public. If you badmouth adjusters, if you badmouth customers in front of your team, you're giving them permission to do the same. And I think that's not the leadership that people need right now. I know a lot of people talk about leadership. That's where it is. Do that stuff in private. Remind your employees that all customers aren't bad. All insurance adjusters aren't bad. They're just doing their job. And we have to have better systems to combat it. If we're unprepared, we're probably going to get the short end of the stick. But I just think lead from the front, and what you do, how you do anything is how you do everything type of stuff. And that was a real powerful. I had about 40 people with their employees, and a lot of people, owners, said guilty.
Yeah, for sure.
I come storming out, and everybody starts talking like I do to everybody. And it ends up being unnecessary and just kind of lowers the emotional IQ of the whole place. So that would be my recent takeaway from just this week. It's so relevant to what I've talked about now.
Pump the brakes, take a breath, react differently. That's awesome.
Wait till tomorrow.
I love it.
Yeah, wait till tomorrow.
Yeah.
Probably won't be a big deal tomorrow.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Yep.
Klark, brother, so good to have you on, dude. So good to see your face. I appreciate you being with us. Everybody, thank you for listening to Business Aspirin. Klark, we'll have you back next year for sure, dude. Talk soon.
See ya.
This has been a Business Aspirin, Pain Relief for Business podcast. If you're a business owner trying to overcome your business pains, follow us on Apple Podcasts or visit our website for more information, job-docs.com.